Breaking news, Crystal Palace will play in the Conference League this season after losing their CAS appeal. Hi there, welcome along to Transfer Talk. Reaction to that huge news in just a moment. We'll also bring you right up to date with the latest transfer news. And big news this lunchtime, Everton have agreed a season-long loan deal with Man City for Jack Grealish. City could lose two players, with Savinho wanted by Tottenham. And after having a window to forget, there's some good news for Eddie Howe as Malik Chow heads to the UK ahead of a medical. We're going to start with that big breaking news. Crystal Palace have lost their appeal to CAS against UEFA's ruling that they must play in the Europa Conference League instead of the Europa League. It means Nottingham Forest will play in the Europa League instead. Our chief correspondent, Kaveh Solokul, is with us. And Kaveh, bad news this for Palace, isn't it? And Steve Parish sounded quite confident going into this appeal.
I wonder, though, how confident he really was. I think he was trying to put a brave face on it. I think all along, Steve Parish and Palace fans have been fearing that this is where we were going to end up. Make no mistake, Parish and all Crystal Palace fans believe they should be playing in the Europa League. They earned their place in the Europa League by winning the FA Cup, the first major trophy in the club's history. But what has happened? They have fallen foul, effectively, of UEFA's administrative rules around multi-club ownership. If you speak to anybody in football, not one single person would tell you that Crystal Palace are part of a multi-club ownership group. Yes, they had a shareholder, a US businessman called John Textor, who also owns shares in Lyon. Lyon and Crystal Palace have both qualified for the Europa League, and UEFA have turned round and said John Textor missed the 1st of March deadline to put his Palace shares in a blind trust. Well, guess what? He's not even a shareholder at Crystal Palace anymore because he sold his shares to another US businessman, Woody Johnson. So you've got a situation now where a club who earned their place in the Europa League by winning the FA Cup have been told by UEFA you cannot play in the Europa League because you've broken our rules. When everybody in football knows that Crystal Palace are not part of a multi-club ownership group. When everybody knows that Manchester City and Girona played in the Champions League last season. Manchester United and Nice played in the Europa League. A few years ago, we had Red Bull Salzburg and RB Leipzig playing in the Europa League. They were in the same group in the Europa League. They played each other home and away, two Red Bull teams. Yet now, UEFA are saying those clubs abided by our rules. They used the legal loopholes that we've put in place where you can get around these rules. Crystal Palace didn't use those legal loopholes.
Is that it? Is that the difference?
Because in March, they didn't think they were going to win the FA Cup because they never won a major trophy. And also because John Textor didn't put his shares in a blind trust because he was selling his shares in Crystal Palace because he was so frustrated that he had very, very little influence at Crystal Palace.
It does seem pretty unfair, doesn't it, when you look at it that way? CAS is often seen as the sort of last route, isn't it? Are there any other routes for them? Can they appeal this decision?
You know what? I think Crystal Palace, they're just sick and tired of this. You know, the fans are still angry. The players will be angry. People at the club will still be angry. But there has to come a point where you draw a line under this and say, look, we've tried our best. We've done everything we can. UEFA are just not listening to us. Yes, we're just going to have to play in the Conference League. I know that doesn't sound great, but Palace have never played in Europe before. Who knows? Maybe they can go on and win the Conference League. Maybe that would be a way of showing UEFA who is right, who's wrong. I'll tell you what, it's going to be a very, very interesting atmosphere when UEFA's, I don't know, does the Conference League have an anthem? When that anthem is played at Selhurst Park, because Crystal Palace fans are still very, very unhappy about the way UEFA have handled this. Is this the end of the road? I think in footballing terms, it is, because Crystal Palace will now play in the Conference League. Steve Parish told us that on Friday. They'll have to actually play in a two-legged playoff later this month on August 21st, August the 28th against Friedrichstad of Denmark or Midtjylland. They'll have to play one of those two teams. Sandwiched in between those two games is their first home Premier League game of the season against Nottingham Forest.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that could make Crystal Palace fans even more angry is, how could this affect their transfer business? How could this affect the future of their big-name players who are coveted, the likes of Gay, the likes of Eze?
I mean, I don't really like doing, I don't really want to kick Crystal Palace when they're down, but the transfer window is open for another 2-3 weeks. We know players like Mark Gahey are in demand, Eberechi Eze in demand, Jean-Philippe Mateta are in demand. Those players, they'll be looking at the situation today thinking, do I want to play in the Conference League, UEFA's third-tier competition, or is this the right time to leave Crystal Palace? Because potentially I could be playing in the Champions League next season. I think as far as the situation regarding Mark Gahey is concerned, I know for a fact there are a lot of clubs interested in signing him. There's been talk about Liverpool. I know other Premier League clubs in the past, they've tried to sign him. Newcastle United, Tottenham, they're all very interested in signing him. He's also got the option of waiting until his contract runs out and moving on a lucrative free transfer to big clubs in Europe next season. So look, I think, unfortunately, some players definitely are going to be leaving Crystal Palace in the next few weeks. But it's not all doom and gloom, because I think Crystal Palace will also be strengthening their squad as well, because they will be playing in Europe. Unfortunately for Palace fans, it's not in the Europa League, it's going to be in the Conference League.
Harvey, good to have you back in the office. Been a while. Right, OK. We've got more on that news, of course, throughout the day. Unfortunately, Crystal Palace have lost their CAS appeal and they will be playing in the Conference League this season, not the Europa League. Nottingham Forest, they will be in the Europa League. We're going to talk transfers now. As you can see, Kev Hatchard and Dan Khan are back with me. We've already got some breaking transfer news to start off with. Rangers are closing in on a deal for the Real Betis defender, Nobel Mendy, and he's set to become Rangers' 10th summer signing. The big story this morning, though, is that Everton have agreed a loan deal to sign Jack Grealish from Manchester City, while Tottenham have approached City about signing Savinho. We will get onto that in a moment, but first of all, Grealish, Dan, from an Everton point of view, David Moyes was talking about he was desperate for signings only a few days ago, only a couple of weeks ago. Well, this feels like a real statement signing for Everton.
It does indeed, Matt. And I think David Moyes was so keen on bringing Jack Grealish to the club. And actually, as an Everton fan, yes, they've been wanting signings, but you now look at the attacking options they now have after signing the likes of Tieno Barry. They already had Beto Limon Jai as well. And they've also signed Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, who has a creative flair to him as well. So now you look at the attacking force. Once they can officially announce Jack Grealish after agreeing this loan for him, he just adds that bit more of stardust in that attacking flair. And I think when you look at what David Moyes was able to do with that West Ham team a few years ago, with the creative players like Jared Bowen, Lucas Paqueta, Mohamed Kudus, you trust David Moyes to really have these exciting players and hopefully do much better than they were able to do last season.
I think it's going to be about balance. David Moyes will be acutely aware of that. But Njai I love. I think he's a really sparky player on that left-hand side. I think Tieno Barry is going to surprise a few people. I think he's raw, but he showed with Villarreal in La Liga that he's got something about him. He's got that willingness to keep working, to keep running in behind. And with Grealish behind him, potentially supplying the ammunition, I think he could have a really good season. So it's a really positive move, I think, for Grealish, who gets a bit of a reset. I think for City, who wanted a solution to that problem, at least in the short term, and definitely for Everton and their fans.
And I'm really pleased for Jack Grealish himself now getting that move. I mean, we've seen him publish videos on social media this pre-season, just trying to, I think, illustrate how hard he's trying to work to really get back to playing football on a consistent level. And you look at the last two seasons for Manchester City in the Premier League, just 20 Premier League appearances. Numbers not particularly impressive, but that's also not the type of player Jack Grealish is. I mean, we know how instrumental he can be.
This is it. A lot of people would say that the move to Man City just didn't work for Jack Grealish, that he wasn't the kind of player that fitted into this structured Guardiola play, that he was shackled a little bit. the view is generally that he's a bit of a free spirit and he needs to be given a bit of freedom. Do you think David Moyes might give him that kind of freedom?
Well, just on the City move, his medal collection would probably say differently.
Well, yeah.
Started a Champions League final, which he won, part of that treble-winning team. But yeah, I think, again, it's about balance. It's about finding a structure that will allow him to be creative, that will allow not the team to be built around him, but allow the best possible use of his talents. Pep Guardiola, doesn't give out games for free. We know that. We know that there have been some big-name players who've been up and down with him. But the fact that he played in these massive games consistently for City tells you the high regard in which he was held by Guardiola. So the talent is there. As Dan was saying, there's clearly a fire there to go and prove people wrong and get back to that top level. That's a great move for Everton and a great move for him.
And he'll have some, teammates from the England team that he'll be aware of as well, the likes of Jordan Pickford, Jared Branthwaite as well, who you think, he'll go into an environment with David Moyes who, you would expect to just express himself a bit more as well.
Do you think he could be used centrally rather than
absolutely.
on the flank?
I think when you look at the last season he spent at Aston Villa, though, yes, we always see him float into the middle, but he'd often start games on the left, and we did see that at City a little bit, but very much more structured to stick on that left wing, didn't we? And I think that's where you see the best of Jack Grealish, giving him a bit of roaming time between the left and central. I think he'll maybe share that space with Ndiaye. Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall can play a bit more advanced as well. But I think what you'll see is just all those attacking players rotate a little bit around Beto, Chumititi as well, who was injured all of last season, predominantly most of last season. So all of a sudden, if you're an Everton fan, you're actually seeing quite a few attacking options where I think as an Everton fan, or not myself, but if I was to imagine being one, it hasn't felt like Everton have had that creative spark a lot in recent years. So I think it's very exciting times.
Right, so we just got the Grealish news, didn't we, just a few minutes ago. Just before that, we also got some other news concerning a Manchester City player, there were reports that Savinho was in talks with Tottenham Hotspur about a potential move there. So they could be losing two wide players, effectively, in a matter of days. This one surprised us a little bit, didn't it, Dan? Because there was a general feeling that Savinho was sort of growing into his role at Manchester City, and maybe there's a bit more to come from it.
Also, I think there's a feeling that Manchester City weren't out there to try and sell Savinho either. I mean, let's not forget, he started 3 of their 4 games in the Club World Cup just a month ago, so clearly still part of Pep Guardiola's plans. But I think it seems that, David Ornstein in The Athletic is reporting that the reported fee that is under discussion is around £43 million, which would mean if that does happen, that City would make a £13 million profit on a player who's only spent a season there. At the end of last season as well, in the last 8 games, he did find minutes hard to come by. And when you also consider Pep Guardiola now has the likes of Oscar Bob back from injury, Omar Mamouche could be used on that left-hand side, as well as all of the other options, you can understand why actually, if Savinho does want to leave, we know in the past, Pep Guardiola has never had an issue with letting players leave, the likes of João Cancelo, Julian Alvarez, we were talking about earlier. He usually lets these players explore those moves, so it sounds like this could be similar. From
a Spurs point of view, does it make a lot of sense when you look at the injury situation? Maddison out for a long time. Kulusevski's not going to be back for a while as well. There's even question marks over Solanke at the moment.
I think he's a phenomenal footballer. I think if you look at his one-on-one ability to break a game open, you look at what he did with Girona a couple of seasons ago. He was a massive part of them qualifying for the Champions League for the first time in their history, and he's still so young. He's got a season under his belt in the Premier League now. For the kind of money we're talking about, it feels like a real bargain to me. The bit that's missing at the moment, and that will be interesting to find out in the fullness of time, how much of a push was there from him and his camp to explore something else? Because if he looks around him and looks at the wide options they have and thinks, I might be the odd man out here over the course of the season, maybe that's an attractive move. So if they can do it, very, very positive for Spurs, I think.
I think also when you look at Spurs and you look at the current options they have, Mohamed Kudus, Brennan Johnson, great options. But you also have to consider HeungMin Son has just left the club as well. And actually, when you look at minutes played and where those players have predominantly played in the last season or so. Both of those players, we can see there actually, Savinho, Manchester City, has played on both flanks, which I think gives Thomas Frank a bit more flexibility. And then when you look at the likes of Mohamed Kudus, Brennan Johnson as well, Brennan Johnson played predominantly on the right-hand side last season, and he was a great goal scorer for Ange Postecoglou then too. Mohamed Kudus, as you can see there, a bit more across. Yeah, absolutely, across those attacking positions. But I think with Savinho, he's more of an out-and-out winger, can play both flanks and gives much more flexibility to what Thomas Frank can do. I think you saw that a little bit at Brentford as well, with how flexible those attacking players were.
I think it's a really important point here in general when we talk about these players. There will be coaches who will have very specific tactical requirements of a player, but you're going to get a lot of rotation, you're going to get a lot of fluidity in a lot of these forward lines. And if you've got Kudus and Savinho in a line like that with some of the quality they have, Kulusevski when he's back, that gives you a lot of scope to combine. And even we were talking about Everton, Grealish and Jai, Barry, that gives you a bit of scope to rotate as well.
OK, all right, Tottenham making some moves in the transfer window. Still to come, though. We're going to be live to Arsenal's training ground to speak to Gary Cottrell. Will there be further incomings for Mikel Arteta? Stay with us. Welcome back to Transfer Talk. I think we all need an injection of energy here, don't we? So let's get to Arsenal now and speak to our reporter, Gary Cottrell, who's at the club's training ground. And he always brings the energy, don't you, Gary? Good to see you, mate. Plenty of new signings. Plenty of new signings at Arsenal. How are they settling in?
It's great, actually. You talk about energy. Coming to training grounds this time of the year, the sun's out. The new season just round the corner, and what a way to start the new season for Arsenal. Probably, arguably, the match of the weekend at Old Trafford on Super Sunday. You can feel the spirit, you can feel the enthusiasm, you can feel the belief, because, of course, everyone starts from zero. Another chance for Arsenal to try and move from second in the Premier League to top of the Premier League. And they've been, as you know, strengthening throughout all summer. 6 signings so far: goal, defence, midfield, up top. And there's a real belief that they've done so well this transfer window in the 10 weeks we've had so far. Of course, still 3 weeks to go. And it's showed already, hasn't it, at the weekend against Athletic Bilbao. One of the signings, Zubi, as he's already known around here, Zubimendi, creating the chance that was put away by Gyökeres. With panache, his first goal for Arsenal in front of the Arsenal fans. We saw the famous celebration, didn't we? And we heard Mikel Arteta just talking him up so much after that game, saying, warning defences what effect he could have if he's given the freedom, if they don't keep their eye on him. And he's fitted in really well too at the club around the training ground. It's been a little bit, hasn't it, of a whirlwind for him because it was a prolonged, painful transfer, but in the end he's here and he's showing his worth. And by the way, the last 3 seasons, the first game of the season, he scored in all of them twice with Sporting Lisbon, once with Coventry City. So if he can do that again at Old Trafford, then the fans really will take to him very, very quickly. Madueke also really fitted in well here. You could tell on his face today at training that he's so pleased to be here. They love him already, I'm told, at the training ground. He hasn't had the minutes yet that perhaps he would have wanted. He's still getting fully up to speed. But he's going to be, I think, certainly Mikel Arteta and the training staff, from what I can hear, think he's going to shine in an Arsenal shirt. Quality now all over the pitch, in depth, a choice now for Mikel Arteta to try and go one better in the Champions League, in the Premier League than he did last season. He says he's got the versatility now that he wanted in the squad. He's got, he says, the ability to change the puzzle either before a game or mid-game, to look at the bench and see quality pretty much in every position.
Just looking at those pictures of training, Gary, seemed a lot of players there, didn't there? So will Arteta want to trim his squad down now, do you think?
Yes, almost inevitably he'll trim the squad down. You can already potentially see the players at will, as I say, with the next 2 or 3 weeks in this transfer window been leaving the club. I've listed some of them. There may be others. Reece Nelson, already interest, we know, from Fulham in him. Zinchenko, a little bit, maybe, shall we say, underused, certainly last season after starting well at Arsenal. Vieira, who's obviously back from being on loan last season. Leo Trossard, currently out injured. He's got a bit of a niggle picked up in the Far East North London derby. Not too far away from being available. Would be available, I think, for the game at the weekend if selected. But he might find his chances a little bit limited this season. And Gabriel Jesus still out injured. Been injured since January. I think the FA Cup game against Manchester United, struggling to get back into the reckoning in terms of fitness. Saw him actually at the training ground. He arrived late. He seemed okay, but still not available to train with the rest of the squad. So potentially his injury might rule him out leaving the club. It might well be that with Kai Havertz and Gyökeres now here and other options as well up top, Marino, let's not forget him, Jesus may be surplus to requirements. So yeah, those are the names, among others, potentially who could leave the club.
And what about any more incomings? The one name that keeps cropping up with Arsenal is Ebere Eze.
Yeah, and you wonder what the news, which I'm sure you've already mentioned from Crystal Palace, you wonder how that affects the situation, because they now know, don't they, where, in terms of European football, they'll be playing next season. They'll know the kind of squad that they're going to need to compete in the Premier League, to compete in the third of the 3 European competitions. The money coming in won't be as high, will it, as it would have been if they'd have won their appeal. The players at the club, the big name players at the club, potentially might have wanted to stay even more if it had been the Europa League rather than the Conference League. And of course, the 2 England internationals at Crystal Palace, Gueye and Eze, both potentially being sold now by Crystal Palace. Their board, didn't they? Suggested at the weekend, Steve Parish, that football, anything can change. So he wasn't ruling out Gueye and Eze leaving the club. So still time for that deal to be done. We know that Arsenal potentially interested in both those players, but Eze seems to be the one nearer potentially coming to Arsenal, although of course nothing yet confirmed. Still plenty of time to go though. And let's not forget Max Dowman, because no money being paid for him. He will shine this season for Arsenal. He's come through the ranks. Interesting him, isn't it? Still only 15, will be 16 at the very end of the year. So because he'll be 16 before the end of the season, can play in the Premier League, can play in the Champions League. Really, really highly thought of. Already had some minutes in pre-season. But because he's still 15, can't actually train with the rest of the senior players, either here at the training ground. Well, he could train, sorry, forgive me. I mean, can't change in the changing rooms with the rest of the players that he's training with, either here at the training ground or at the stadium. It's not a big issue. They've dealt with it before, but it's interesting that that's how young he is, and yet still massively, potentially a big new signing for Arsenal this season.
Yeah, it's amazing. That good, that young. Thanks very much, Gary. Right, still to come, we've got an update on a couple of forwards for you on Rasmus Højlund's future, and will Nicholas Jackson stay at Chelsea? Stay with us. Right, some pictures fresh into us. This could be Sunderland's next signing. That is the centre-back Omar Alderete, who potentially is on his way to Sunderland after a fee of £10.4 million plus £1 million in add-ons has been agreed with Getafe for the Paraguayan centre-back. That's him arriving at Newcastle Airport today. He will have his Sunderland medical this afternoon after agreeing a 4-year deal. Right, we've discussed Manchester City already, and we have some fresh developments for you. Ben Ransom joins us live right now. Afternoon, Ben. We got some big news this morning, didn't we, with Jack Grealish headed for the exit door at City. What can you tell us?
Yeah, this is a huge move in Premier League context, isn't it? Let's not forget Jack Grealish arrived at Manchester City from Aston Villa for £100 million, and he was part of the team to win that historic treble, not least lifting the Champions League trophy at the end of the 2023 season. But he has struggled in the last year, 18 months, to really nail down a permanent spot in Pep Guardiola's first team. And it's no surprise that he is on the move. It's no surprise that someone like Everton, who see him potentially as the player to give them that attacking threat through the season they'll need, moving into their new stadium under David Moyes, an area where they've been lacking. So in that sense, a season-long loan that's been agreed makes absolute sense for both parties. I can tell you it's my understanding that that deal to take Grealish to Everton includes a £50 million option that Everton can choose to take up at the end of this season, should the season-long loan go the way that both Everton and Grealish hope it will. So that is a really intriguing part and element to this deal, because it shows just how seriously Everton value him potentially coming into that squad. And from a player's point of view, look, this is a player who wants to get himself back into England contention. I think his desire has been to play first team football at the top level, at his top level. And from a Man City point of view, I think there's always been an understanding that this summer presented the opportunity for Grealish to move and find that. He wasn't necessarily going to be in Pep's starting 11 starting the new season, but he's a player that everyone at City likes. Obviously, there's real fondness. I've seen him in and around the dressing room, such a popular player at Manchester City. But the reason he was left out of the Club World Cup squad by City was to give him that full season, give him the best opportunity to explore his options and find a move. And it feels as though the Everton move is the one that's going to give him that platform, shall we say, to play himself back into England reckoning.
Well, that wasn't the only bit of interesting news we've had regarding City this morning. Just before that, in fact, we heard that Tottenham have approached City over Savinho. Was that a bit of a surprise to you?
Yeah, it was a surprise to me. I think it was a surprise to many people at Manchester City as well, because Savinho, who only joined the club obviously a year ago and had that first season in the Premier League, I think showed flashes of why City felt so strongly about bringing him in from their sister club Girona, because this is a player that's been within the City football group for a couple of seasons now. They've seen him grow, that player that at Girona was providing so many assists, so dangerous down the flanks. And I think Pep likes him, there's no doubt about that. I think Pep sees him as a first-team player going into the new season. So I think the bid has come out of left field from Tottenham. I have seen the figures that have been talked about. I think the fee in the region of £43 million, equating to about €50 million, has been speculated upon. But certainly speaking to people in and around Manchester City today, I get the sense it would take a lot more than that for this transfer to go through. Simply put, they as a club believe in what Savinho brings. He's very much a part of the first team plans going into the start of the season this weekend, and for them to part company with Savinho at this stage of the window, it takes something a lot more, a fee a lot higher, I think it's fair to say, than £43 million to even come close to matching City's valuation of the winger.
Right, so it could be two outgoings. Pep Guardiola was adamant, wasn't he, at the end of the season, that he wanted a smaller squad. So could there be even more outgoings?
Yeah, it does feel that way. It feels as though it's very much the focus at City is obviously outgoings right now, because they need to get the squad trimmed. Guardiola, as we know, likes to run with a fairly lean squad, which has counted against them possibly. I think last season we saw that, which is why the club dipped into the transfer market in January, just to give him a few new bodies and help them make sure of Champions League qualification. But with players like Rodri coming back from injury and back into first team contention, you still feel as though there may be one or two that do leave before the transfer window. And one player that I'm told is edging closer to an exit is James Matei. I'm told that move to Forest is getting closer now. Nottingham Forest have been admiring James Matei all summer. We know that there have been conversations over the last few weeks between the clubs about his future. This is a player that has obviously fantastic potential. We saw that in his loan spells. We saw that with the England under-21s as well. He is a player that firmly believes he's ready now to play regular first-team football. A player that Pep Guardiola likes. I mean, Pep has spoken many times about bringing Matei into the first-team picture, keeping him around the first-team squad last season. But even so, Matei found minutes difficult to come by, particularly Premier League starts. And I think he feels that this summer is the stage for him to go and play first-team football for a team permanently, to start to really realise that potential that we've seen over the last couple of seasons. So the update on Matei, and it feels as though this one is going to happen in terms of an exit, but a move to Forest specifically, I'm told, edging closer. That info, by the way, coming from the City end, nothing back yet from the Nottingham Forest side of that potential transfer.
And what about Burnley, Ben? Because you've been watching them train this morning. They haven't been quite as active as the two other promoted teams, Leeds and Sunderland, but how is their business progressing?
Well, I think actually, I mean, look, Sunderland are clearly giving this a good go, aren't they? They've invested heavily in the squads, trying to bring Premier League experience in with the likes of Granit Xhaka. But actually, I think Burnley have been probably almost as busy. 9 new permanent arrivals. That's in addition to the loan players from last year that they fulfilled the obligations or options to buy this summer, which brings their tally to 13 new signings essentially. And a bit like Sunderland, they've clearly targeted Premier League experience to give them the best possible chance of staying in the division. We've seen over the last couple of seasons how difficult that is, that promotions from the Championship and then being competitive in the Premier League. 6 up, 6 down across the last 2 seasons. Well, Sunderland, Leeds and Burnley all very much looking to break that mould. Burnley have become a yo-yo team in the last 4 seasons. It's 2 promotions and 2 relegations. Well, we're hoping that the 5th season is uneventful in the sense that they'll be looking just to try and finish outside of the bottom 3. The likes of Kyle Walker, Axel Tuanzebe coming in with Premier League experience. And in the last week, 3 new signings through the door. Leslie Ukachukwu coming in from Chelsea, a player that's played minutes in the Premier League, a player who again feels that though this is his home. We saw him training today, looked really at home. I heard him speaking some French with Maxime one of the other French-speaking players here. So he has really settled in quickly. Kyle Walker wasn't actually in the open part of the training session we saw, but he played a large number of minutes at the weekend in that final friendly, and he brings a wealth of Premier League experience, not least 6 Premier League titles. So that's been some coup to get him. Also saw Martin Dubravka out there, the goalkeeper that's come in. We expect to be number 1, a player that at Newcastle, again, has so much experience playing in the Premier League and in Europe as well. So they've brought experience in, and they're hoping that someone like Armando Broja, the most recent player through the door, can start to fulfil a bit of his potential, because he had a career where he shot through, didn't he? Impressed a lot of us at Chelsea, scored goals for them as he got in the first team, and then had that really successful loan spell at Southampton. But more recently, injury particularly he struggled with, didn't score at either of his loan spells with Fulham or Everton in the last couple of seasons. So he's a player that really wants to kickstart his career, and Burnley believe they're going to offer him that platform. And they might not be done yet. I mean, in terms of incomings, I think Scott Parker wants another couple before the season starts. He also recognises, though, that the squad is, in his own words, a bit bulky. You would expect there to be a fair few departures as well before the transfer window closes. But certainly the mood around Burnley, having seen training today with regards to their transfer business, is one of optimism and excitement. They feel the players they brought through the door give them a fighting chance going into that first game of the weekend.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Ben. Right, let's get back onto some other news with Kevin and Dan. You guys still awake? Still there? Still going?
Here,
okay.
sharp.
Good. I thought the last part was some of your finest work.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk about Rasmus Højlund, because his days at Manchester United could be numbered. AC Milan are in talks over signing him. Kevin, do you think going back to Italy would be a good move, a place where he has happy memories? And do you think he would fit into this AC Milan side?
Well, Milan are trying to boost that striker group because they've lost a lot of players. Luka Jovic left, Tammy Abraham's moved on, Joao Felix didn't really work for him at Milan, so they need more strikers. They've already got Santi Jimenez. I was talking to a commentator who covers Serie A and specifically Milan quite a lot, and he believes that they actually would bring in 2 more strikers to try and push Jimenez, really, and give him cover. Dusan Vlahovic they're talking about, but that's a difficult deal to do, bringing him in from Juventus because his wages are so high. But Rasmus Højlund did brilliantly for Atalanta under Gasperini. So I think he needs a bit of a reset just to boost his confidence. And Milan is a massive club. And under Max Allegri, who's gone back there as coach, they feel that they can push for the title. It's not just about qualifying for the Champions League. they feel they can really push the likes of Napoli and Inter.
Well, actually, interestingly, AC Milan have also been linked with Nicholas Jackson of Chelsea, and his future looks increasingly uncertain as well. He was left out of Chelsea's pre-season friendly with AC Milan yesterday. His valuation in any potential deal would be in line with fees paid for strikers in the current markets. That basically means that Chelsea want quite a hefty fee for him, in line with the likes of Ekitike, Gyökeres, etc. In Good Morning Transfers, we talked about how perhaps Milan, Juventus and now Bayern Munich possibly not going to be destinations that he could end up at for various reasons. Do you think, Dan, he could end up at a Premier League club?
Well, I think, first of all, in his first 2 seasons, he has shown steady improvement. I mean, his 10 goals last year in the Premier League maybe don't tell the full story. I mean, yes, his finishing can clean up a little bit in terms of his clinicalness, but I think his overall round play was actually really positive. And there was a spell where he was injured for a little bit, or when he was suspended, when he was out of the team, you noticed a clear difference in terms of performance, I think, in terms of his link up with Cole Palmer that wasn't quite there when he was absent from the team. So I'm a big fan of Nicholas Jackson. I think if a Premier League team can afford him, because he is on an 8-year contract now at Chelsea after signing a 2-year extension just last season, we'll have to wait and see. But I think he still has such a ceiling to reach, still so much potential there.
Who could afford him? Well, I mean, I suppose Newcastle, if they get any money for Alexander Isak.
I mean, I think right now he makes Newcastle make the most sense in terms of finances, but also the need of a striker. Whether Alexander Isak stays or goes, they need someone else in terms of European football as well, and the amount of games they will have. And I think Nicholas Jackson would be good there, especially with the likes of Anthony Elanga and everyone else. I'd be very excited to see that, but let's wait and see who can afford him.
Well, it's the pace, isn't it, that he has. He does bring a chaotic edge to his game, but that can be a good thing sometimes because it makes him unpredictable. I think he suffered from a couple of difficult moments, getting sent off against Flamengo, the Club World Cup, sent off against Newcastle late last season in what was a huge game for Chelsea. Didn't matter in the end, but it was big at the time. But we shouldn't be surprised by that because he didn't have much of a track record when he came. He only really had half a season of proper elite performance in La Liga. So he was always going to be a risk. So it does feel a little bit like Højlund in the sense that, are these clubs giving up on these players a bit too quickly?
Just in terms of players who might come in to Chelsea, I just want to get your thoughts on this, Kevin. We're hearing that Chelsea want to bring both Garnacho and Xavi Simons in before the end of the window, if possible, but nothing concrete yet, no formal offer. If you were a Chelsea fan, which of those 2 players do you think would be more important to the side, if you could choose one of them?
I like Xavi a lot in terms of what he brings. I do like Garnacho, but I think they brought in Gittins to play that left wing, kind of traditional winger's role. Xavi gives you something a bit different in the sense that he's a little bit Palmer-esque. Palmer is incredible, so I'm not putting him on that same level just now. But he can play in that central area. He'll naturally drift out to the left, but he provides goals, he provides assists. The only question I have in my mind about Xavi is how's he going to deal with not being the main man? Because he's absolutely been that at Leipzig. He was that at PSV before then, and he's been at big clubs before, like Barcelona, like PSG, where he wasn't able to really stamp his authority on things. So I think Xavi is the more interesting player. I think he can maybe do more for them in the long run. So we'll see how that shakes down.
OK, might get both, of course, you never know, right? We've talked about strikers. Up next, it's a tale of 2 new centre-backs in the northeast. One is off the Weir side, the other to the Toon. We'll give you all the info next. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Transfer Talk. After a summer of disappointment in the transfer window, finally looks like there's some positive news for Eddie Howe. Malik Chow will have his medical today ahead of a £35 million move from AC Milan to Newcastle. Centre-back, obviously Chow. They've been looking for a centre-back for a while. Newcastle, there were those failed bids for Gay. They've now turned to Chow. What kind of centre-back is he?
I think he's exciting because he's really good on the ball. Great passer, can bring the ball out from the back, break the lines with those rapid passes. And he's somebody that was raw when he came through at Schalke. He smoothed off a few of those rough edges. He's been at Milan. Milan, I think, didn't particularly want him to go, and that gives you an indication of how well he's done. So I think it's a good signing.
OK, let's move over to Weir's side then. It's northeast part, this one, pretty much all we're talking about, because Sunderland have agreed a deal to sign Omar Alderete from Getafe. The deal's worth £10.4 million plus £1 million in add-ons. The 28-year-old will now have a medical. This is him earlier today. Exclusive pictures arriving into Newcastle. So another centre-back, this time going to Sunderland. What can they expect from Alderete?
If I tell you that he's had 40 yellow cards across the last 4 seasons in La Liga, gives you a kind of indication of the kind of defender he is. He's been at Getafe. You learn a few tricks of the trade under Jose Bordalas there. But somebody who's left-footed but can play left centre-back, right centre-back, has played in a 3 and in a 4 at the back. So I think he's a smart signing. He's got that physicality to cope with the Premier League.
I really like his fit as well. Look really good.
You liked his what?
His fit.
Oh, his fit,
Yeah,
okay.
looked really nice.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd comment on that as well.
OK, all right. We'll try.
He hasn't mentioned me at all so far. So try not to take that as an...
I'm just worried about the yellow cards with him and Granit Xhaka in the side. Why don't we have a look at all of the business that they've done, Sunderland, in terms of incomings, because they have been very busy, haven't they? It's not always just about numbers. It's about quality as well. There they are. So what is it? 11 in total. They've brought in total spend £147.2 million. Dan, when you look at that, I mean, they've got some Premier League experience in there as well. Do you think they've spent that money wisely?
Yeah, look, I'll say when I first saw Sunderland's window a few weeks ago, I thought signings were incredibly exciting, making Lafille permanent, of course. Simone Dingra, a young winger from Brighton who does have Premier League experience. But I think what I've been really pleased about in the last week or so with their signings is that they have added more seniority and experience in their team. The likes of Granit Xhaka, I'm really pleased about in terms of being able to understand what it takes to make it in the Premier League. There will be some difficult moments that Sunderland will have this season, but being able to know the tempo of a game, as you were talking about Alderete as well, his maybe not so great discipline, but that aggression I think is real positive. Masuaku at West Ham, we remember as well, former left-back of West Ham. That Premier League experience, again, very important. So I've been pretty pleased over the last few weeks.
It feels like there are some leaders in there, some real combatants. You look at Ronaldo, he learnt under Simeone at Atletico. Xhaka, I think, is a real coup.
Yeah.
I mean, he was so important to that Leverkusen team that won the league and the cup.
With Xhaka, what was the reaction to that in Germany? The fact that you go from the second place team in the Bundesliga to a side that's come up from the Championship?
Shows the pull of the Premier League for a start. Also shows that it was getting towards the end of an era at Leverkusen. But just days before he confirmed that move to Sunderland, Erik ten Hag, the Leverkusen boss, came out and said, we don't want him to go. He's got 3 years left on his deal. We're determined to keep him. And off he went. So Leverkusen didn't really want to let him go, but the numbers got to a level they were happy to accept.
This is interesting, isn't it? I mean, how much they've spent now. It's only Liverpool, Chelsea, United, Arsenal, Manchester City ahead of them. Time will tell whether they've spent it wisely. Forest spent a lot of money a few years ago, not necessarily that wisely.
Well, all I would say quickly is, I think this is more of a danger warning for teams who we spoke in Good Morning Transfers, the likes of Brentford and teams like that, Bournemouth, who aren't spending just yet. I'd be worried about Sunderland in terms of their position in the table at the moment.
Guys, always a pleasure to see you two guys on a Monday. Of course, they'll both be back next Monday as well. And Good Morning Transfers returns tomorrow at 9 a.m. Jeff Hendrick is the studio guest. That'll be interesting. We're also back tomorrow at midday for Transfer Talk. And the Transfer Show returns at 5 and 7 p.m. tonight. Plenty to get through on that as well. But after the break, more on the big news. Palace have lost their CAS appeal. They will play in the Conference League. Stay with us.